Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Tea, You and Me. This is our show for today. We are going to have a great time, a great show. Today's a special show. We are interrupting our normal flow where we're talking about True Voice. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about True Voice and everything you can use to discover your voice and to help other people discover theirs. And we're going to continue with that series next week. But we want to get in today what we've been celebrating kind of quietly behind the scenes since Juneteenth. We've been celebrating independence, and we're going to continue to celebrate independence all through the month of July. In fact, if you look at the chat box right now, you'll be able to pick up a whole ton of free ideas, free concepts, deep discounts on all the products and services that I have found in my products and services that my friends and everything they have found as well. And there's a post right there. You should be able to find it quite easily on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're looking and chiming in, because we want to make sure that everyone gets some of this independent stuff, right? We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak for themselves, shine for themselves, create for themselves, develop their own authority. That's what we're going to be talking about today. What is it? This independence thing, this notion of independence. And we're going to beat it up. We're going to talk about it. We're going to intellectualize over it. We're going to really add some exciting and useful discussion. So stay tuned and definitely get ready to participate. The first question I'm going to ask you to do as you log in to the system and to the portal, I want you to make sure that you tell us who you are, where you found us from, where you're coming, anything you want to share about your business or anything that you're interested in or into right now. Definitely put that information in the chat so people can follow up with you. This is a business-friendly channel, so if you have a product or a service that you want people to know about, definitely put the links in, put your email address in, put your contact information in, anything you want, because people are going to watch this show today and they're going to watch the recording of this show on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube, as long as those things are allowed to stay up there in the universe, right? So definitely pay attention to this opportunity and make sure that you do this, because one of the reasons why we do this in the first place, one of the reasons why we had this show, and one of the reasons why we had Coffee Tea, You and Me, which is the show is based on, is a program that every week we want to make a business-friendly environment for entrepreneurs and business leaders. Every Friday, starting at 3 o'clock, for as long as we need to communicate and talk, we want to make sure that we're giving people opportunities to show up, be their authentic selves, represent their brand, represent their businesses, because that's what it's all about. And more importantly, this month, it's about independence. It's about really figuring out, what does it take for you to be self-sufficient? What does it take for you to have enough to be able to decide, do, and think for yourself without having the interference of too many tyrants and too many intolerable influences on your life and on your world? So we're going to talk about that. And if you want to chime in to the discussion, definitely feel free. I really need you to do so. So I'm gonna be throwing a lot of engaging questions out at you. And so if you have any thoughts or ideas to share, please do so. Doing this does a couple things for you. Even if you're watching this a recording, on the recording, the chat box will still be open and you can still communicate. You can still share the ideas and thoughts that you have. One of the things I truly believe, and this is something that we're going to talk about as we get into the topic, I truly believe that this notion of independence, sort of American style, is a bit of a myth. There's going to be plenty arguments about that I know people will kind of come up with, and they're going to go, we're the founding fathers of the country. They thought about this and they wrote it all down and they created a beautiful document, and all those things are true. They did, and they did create a beautiful document. But I want to challenge you to think about what they might have meant and what they might have meant about independence, and then how does that flow down through us? There's a series of things we're going to talk about. What does independence stand for? What does it mean? What are the original thoughts about it as far back as we can go and understand in human thought and writing? What are we doing today to actually exercise these thoughts about independence? And should we be looking for independence at all? Is it something that maybe we should be looking at some other ideas and some key concepts about independence? And how does it affect most importantly, our businesses. How does it affect the small women-owned, minority-owned businesses, which I love and I'm a tremendous advocate for? These are the things we're going to be talking about. So if you know some friends that you might want to share this conversation with, go ahead and hit them up in the links right now. Go ahead and share this opportunity with them via YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching from, wherever you're calling in from. Definitely do that because it's going to be epic. At least I hope it will. Okay, so as you know, we don't start very much off with Coach Powell branding. We're not doing a little bit of video sharing. So I'm going to share this with you really quickly just to open into the show. Ha-cha-cha-cha. Okay, so like I said here in the post earlier, you're going to see that we're going to have a lot of free posts. And if there's some things that you want to share, things you want to share about your business, definitely do that. Today is the month of celebrating, I guess, liberty and freedom and all this notion of independence, American style. And we want to talk about it. We want to talk about what it means. We'll talk about what it's in. I've been doing a lot of deep research. And in fact, if you want to take advantage of the free download we have for you guys, I posted a copy of that, and that's posted for you in the chat. If for some reason you can't get to that in the chat, whether you're watching it on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, definitely let me know, because this is a critically important time, right? I want you to be able to see what we're talking about here, and I want you to have it for yourself, to download it, put it on your own hard drive, share it, copy it, make comments on it, do whatever you want to do. This is for public consumption. I'll let you know that the document itself isn't finished. So you might find some spellos and some typos. It hasn't really been edited, but these are just my thoughts from the research, right? So you're going to find lots of links in there for you to go back to and validate some of the thoughts and ideas and kind of beat it up for yourself at some point in time. I'm just going to lay it out there for your consumption right now so that you can get some of the information right away. Also, if you are in the business of business, you might want to participate in my latest promotion that we have going on right now. And let me see, where did I put that? There we go. Boom. Also, a bunch of deals I got available for people on everything that you can imagine when it comes to coaching and bringing your business forward and developing your practices. And so you'll find that if you hit that link, and that's a link back to LinkedIn, if you hit that link, you're going to find some of the best deals we have on coaching right now, and a way for you to sign up to get a free hour of coaching with yours truly, as well as to get our rate sheets, our capability statements, and everything that we need to know and share with what our services are, so that you can figure out it's something that you're going to use. And again, the deals we're offering right now are the best deals we've ever offered. Along with that, you'll also see that I have tons of friends all over LinkedIn and all over the universe that have chimed in, and they're offering the deals for their businesses and their services that help businesses as well. And so if you find something there that you want to do, you'll definitely, give them a thumbs up. And again, in the comment section to that link, you'll be able to find all kinds of deals for all the various aspects of your business. And if you are somebody who's in business and you want to make an offer, a special Independence Day offer or month of independence, as long as the opportunities last, definitely put your offer in the comment box. Definitely chat it, because we want to share as much opportunities with as many entrepreneurs as we possibly can. And I don't care what your business is. If you're another coach, have at it. Let's go for it. Most of my friends are coaches anyway, and we always have opportunities to share with one another. And I understand that the universe is big, and there's opportunities for everyone. So everybody can play. This is very, very important, and we want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to play. My girl Annette is watching on Fire Stick. I don't even know what that's all about, Annette. But thank you for watching on Fire Stick. I really appreciate it. I guess Fire Stick is some type of video process or video chat process, but it's good to see you out there. It's also good to see my girl Nancy. She's always here. So I love that she supports the show. I really appreciate you, Nancy. And everything in here is going to get great, going to be good. So it's right there. And Nancy said, currently doing life coaching, holistic healing, writing, editing projects. Email me at myperspective, and put coffee to you and me in the subject line so your email doesn't get lost in the crowd. Thank you so very much, Nancy. That means, you guys, you hear this. if you told Nancy that you found it through Coffee, Tea, You and Me, she's going to really pay attention to you. So if you want to get some of the best deals and some of the great opportunities to work with the great Nancy Ayana Wyatt yourself, make sure that you follow her instructions that are right here on your screen. All right, guys. I love you guys for coming out. Love you guys for supporting. Let's get this party started. What are we talking about? When we talk about independence, what are we saying? What are we sharing? What does it really mean? If you look at the document that I have for you guys, and again, definitely let me know if you have any problems downloading that document. What you're going to see quite readily right up front is there's some challenges to independence, right? The document says it's the art and science of independence, and it starts to ask some very basic questions. Can you really think, act, and speak in such a way as to consistently deliver the most positive benefits of true independence in your life and business? Can you? Can you really freely just share anything you want to share, do anything you want to do, go any place you want to go without any type of impediment or any type of influence or any type of ideas that are going to be coming at you? Is that possible? If you think yes, do me a favor, put yes in the chat box. If you think no, put no in the chat box. The next question is, do you empower yourself and others to deal with the 8 very real challenges to independence? Or do you use your influence to promote conformity, predictability, and tradition? What do you do? Are you the kind of person that goes along to get along? Are you the kind of person that likes to have everything lined up so that you know exactly what's going to happen always, all the time? Do you just follow whatever the local practices have been over the very many years without challenging anything? You that kind of person? Let's talk about it. Are you equipped to use the wisdom of the ancient writings to free yourself and others from the tyranny and oppression? Or are you such a lost leader that you become more a part of the problem than the solution? I know people like that. I know people who are so caught up in the dogma or the status quo or the title, the role that they're in, whether they're a Republican or a Libertarian or a Democrat or a Christian or an evangelist or some type of other religious ideology or thought process, right? They may be a Muslim, they may be a Jew, they may be Buddhist in sort of their practices and thoughts and ideas. But are you really, really equipped to understand all of the ancient information, all of the ancient writing, and put it in a way that actually solves today's problems? Are you able to share what the world's greatest philosophers, psychologists, and social economists have determined is the best way to create fulfillment in every human need and develop a sense of self and emotional and psychological health? Are you that kind of person? Can you do it? Do you know how to do it? Are you ready to lead your very own natural revolution? Can you change, transform, and modernize yourself in such a way as to cause your own sense of well-being? If you're intrigued by the possible answers to all those questions, right? If you're intrigued by and you're just titillated by it, and something about it that interests you, hang on, strap up. We're really gonna take a deep dive into some of these things, because remember, there's no easy answers, right? There's no easy answers to these questions, but I promise you the following discussion is gonna challenge and be exciting, if nothing else. So let's get this party started. On the first page of our training manual, you may see a little bit of a symbol. And right off the bat, there's a picture of me, and it's Happy 4th of July. And I remember, when I think about the 4th of July, Independence Day, I start thinking about parades, and I start thinking about music, and I think about fireworks. And I think about all the things that traditionally as a child was exciting about the red, white, and blue and the Star Spangled Banner and all the things that, I thought were so interesting. And I reminded of times when I was very young, and I would watch my father coming home on a ship, and I'd be looking out on the waves as the ship came in because we knew the ship was out at sea and it was about ready to come into port and dock. And I would see on the top of the boat, just hundreds and hundreds of sailors all dressed in white and their little white hats and all that kind of stuff. And my mother would try to help me kind of find which one of these sailors on the top of the boat was my father. And I was so proud, as the boat, pulled into the harbor and pulled into the dock, and they started, putting out the ropes and letting go the anchor and making sure that everything was secure before the soldiers were allowed to have that final ceremony and leave the ship. And I'd see my father coming down the gangplank with his rucksack on his white and dressed in his whites, and he's coming home. He's everything is all ready to go. He's all packed up. He's leaving the boat on that day. It took about 15 minutes for them to start to disembark the vehicle, the ship, and start moving people out. And I started looking at people's bodies coming down the gangplank. Which one is dad? Which one is dad? Ticker tape is flying all over the place. Everybody's yelling and screaming. Everybody's happy, and there's music playing, and everybody is excited. This are the types of things I'm reminded of when I think about the 4th of July. But I'm also reminded about some other things. I'm also reminded about what this thing, independence, this idea, this notion of independence, as I became an adult, what is this independence notion all about? And what does it matter from us, from the American people? And there's some concepts I want you to kind of think about. First of all, let's think about the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence happens in 3 distinct phases. The first phase, they've laid out in some eloquent language. Thomas Jefferson and some of his friends have got together, and they've decided that they wanted to create and use this language to express really the values and principles that they hold dear and the reasons why they hold these values and principles dear. And you hear words like inalienable rights, and you hear words like endowed by their creator, and you hear words like making sure that we protect the right of everyone to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And it's just the language is infectious, and it draws you in because it's so powerful. It's so powerful the way it's worded. And I love that first phase of the Declaration of Independence. Then the second phase of the Declaration of Independence kind of helps you realize why they thought the first phase was so important. Because in the second phase, they lay out 25 different accusations of the king and the British Empire at the time. And these accusations over time, and it's funny that when we look at it and go back in history and we look at what was really going on, actually about 2 of those accusations were accurate. But the 25 accusations they laid out against the king really was reflective of the things that they were having problems with, not just as a nation, but personally. So this is why it's important to not just think about this Declaration of Independence as a government document, but it's also a personal decree of the things that the men who originally wrote and then signed that document believed in. They believed in it so much. They believed in the process so much. They believed in what was going on, the tyranny that they logged down or documented or accused the leaders of, that they were willing to, in phase 3 of that same document, to commit their lives, their property, their very reputations to the pursuit of this freedom that they were talking about, this liberty, this independence. So let's just make sure that we get a good feel for what was actually going on at the time in 1776 when this document was signed. First of all, they lay out that these rights are unalienable that they were talking about. The right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Right? This unalienable. People have these rights. But who are they considering people? Because later on in the Constitution, we find that they weren't considering the enslaved Africans actual people who had these rights. And the only reason they wanted to consider them was because they didn't want to levy a full tax on them as servants in their properties. So 3/5 was enough. So they consider African American men 3/5 of a person. And so therefore, those persons were not a part of these unalienable rights that they were writing about at the time. They also didn't consider women a part of these unalienable rights. And so basically the white men who signed the Declaration of Independence were proposing that they were the only people that had these unalienable rights, the right to pursue life, liberty, happiness, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? They were the only ones who had the right to pursue it in that particular document at that particular time. Now, at that time, most of the colonies were slave colonies. And most of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence had something to do with or profited from, somehow, some way, this institution of slavery. They had everything to do with the subjugation of women all around. Now, this is the founding document of the nation. And we talk about independence. Not only do you have to talk about who they thought deserved independence, but what they meant and what they meant by independence. We got to talk about what it really looked like, what really happened. So I want to set that up. And then I found out that, when you do a deeper study politically about what's going on in the country today, more than 47% of Americans consider themselves libertarians. They don't consider themselves Democrats. They don't consider themselves independents. I mean, they consider themselves libertarians, right? They're right in the middle. They don't consider themselves Democrats, nor do they consider themselves Republicans. They're neither conservatives, nor are they free-thinking liberals, right? So think about it. 47% of the country do not appreciate, they don't want to be labeled. They don't want to have any assignment on them, because even the assignment itself, even the label itself, starts to mean that they believe in something or they're willing to support something that they simply are not willing to go to the mat on this, right? So there's certain ideologies on both sides of the camp, and they switch back and forth, which is crazy to me. But there's certain ideologies on both sides of the political spectrum that will appeal to the conservatives, and certain ideologies and thoughts that will appeal to liberals. But most Americans are neither. In fact, both parties are losing ground for the hearts and minds of the country, which is a lot about what we think about this division might be. Whatever divisions you're thinking about, you can understand that the country is losing touch with its own values, and they're disagreeing with what they think the values of the country should be. And there's not a whole bunch of agreement about that, but we all agree that too far to the left is a problem and too far to the right is a problem. Well, a majority of us, I won't say we all. So 47% at least. And that's a growing majority. So what does that mean when it's all said and done? How do we reconcile that when we start thinking about our independence? Well, the answer is it depends. Psychologists would suggest, and there's 11 ideas that I'm going to share with you today. Psychologists would suggest that the first notion of independence is about the ability to control your life in the present and in the future. You can consider yourself independent if you have absolute control over your life in the present and in the future. So let's think about that. Who has absolute control over their life right now? Let me think. Do you have control over your life when you have bills to pay? Do you have control over your life when you're dependent on the store having the food that you need? Do you have absolute control over your life when you need other people to validate and share and participate in your ideas? Do you have absolute control over your life? Really? Does anybody? Really? And I got some thoughts on that, but I want to hear yours. Do we have absolute control over our lives? Yes or no? Put it in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. Number 2. Again, the American Psychological Association would suggest that independence is that you are never influenced in any way by anyone or anything outside of yourself. Is this even possible? To not be influenced in any way by anyone or anything outside of ourselves? I can't come up with any examples of how it's possible that someone could be not influenced by anyone or anything. Even infants would be raised in the woods. Somebody would have to take care of them. Stories that we've even known here throughout history about infants that were raised outside of society have been taken care of by wolves or bears, even monkeys, right? So and we know most of those are fictitious stories. And so, you cannot survive without someone to take care of you. You can't be born without someone giving birth to you. That's not within the realm of possibility, right? Even the Immaculate Conception. People say that, Jesus required birth. Somebody had to actually give birth to Jesus, So that's, when you think about it, it's like, is it possible really to be independent? What is this notion of independence anyway? Why do we even talk about it? The Bible goes on to say, and this is why it's important to kind of think about this, because of the framework of the Constitution. The first thing they suggest is that these rights are given, endowed by the Creator, these unalienable rights, which they're willing to suffer and die to defend, right? They're suggesting that these rights are given to us by the Creator, and nobody has the right to, in any way, shape, or form, impede another's ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. So number 3 is it comes directly from the Bible. The Bible says freedom requires a dependence on God. The Bible says that right up front. I'm sure the Declaration, the writers of the Declaration of Independence kind of were thinking about some of the things the Bible was suggesting when they're in there. That's why it's important to think about it. It also says we are here to serve God, but we're never to hold ourselves better than anyone else or stand in their way. It says we embody the same qualities and feelings about freedom that God does. It says that we should never accept any slavery of any kind. And finally, the Bible says we have the ability to choose righteousness, salvation, purpose, meaning over damnation, sin, evil intent. We have the ability to choose how we're going to behave. I didn't write this stuff, and if you go deeper into the document, you'll see exactly chapter and verse where these ideas might come from. But I think it's important to chop it up. It's important to think about it. If you believe that independence is real and it's something that you should pursue, then what is the basis of this discussion that you would have about independence? What do you mean by independence? Is there any value to it? Is there any value to it at all? It really depends. I say that, that's not really a possibility, but I'm willing to entertain the thought because I think there might be something there. There's something there with this pursuit of freedom. There's something there with this pursuit of happiness that I think that will lead us to a positive place. But there's a couple of things I think we have to accept and deal with. The next kind of concepts I got about this from my research came from the various writings and various quotes from some of our best authors that are out there. On page 5, there's about 4 more concepts or ideas. And I should have wrote down where these come from. I'll do that later on in an update version of the document. But this idea that independence has both costs and benefits is really important. Because if it costs you to be independent, or it gives you benefits to be independent, then there must be some influences that affect your level of independence. Maybe independence is not pure. Maybe independence comes in levels, right? The next idea is that we should take as much time as we can to dream, because really the only true thing that we can think of that has no limitations are our dreams, our imaginings, our fantasies. Isn't that where we create most of the things that are now reality anyway? Isn't that where somebody, as a result of their experiences, or result of their understandings of things, had a thought that this was possible? They didn't know it was possible. They had a thought it was possible. And then through testing and through sharing and through examination, we come up with a new reality. We come up with some new processes, some new ideas, some new designs, some new possibilities. But they started here in the mind. So that makes me sort of think that, if independence is possible, it's possible here. It's possible where we think and dream. And anything that really gets in the way of us being able to think and dream really is something that we really, really have to stamp out. Because even Viktor Frankl, if you ever read his work, dreamed and created even under the occupation of Nazi Germany at the time. I think he was in one of the concentration camps. But there's stories of how he created concertos and symphonies all in his head while under occupation, while involved in the concentration camps. So was he free? Was he independent? Well, his mind was. His body might not have been. So I make this discussion so that you think about, when you think about independence, there might be different levels of independence. There might be mental independence. There might be physical independence, spiritual independence, independence related to your emotions and feelings. Maybe those things are some things we should also consider when we think about this independence thing, right? Lifelong independence isn't possible, but we absolutely need each other to exist and survive. That's another truth. We cannot survive without one another. We won't even know who we are, what we're doing, what we're thinking without one another. Because we have no relativity. There's no relative understanding from this versus that. Some suggest that you wouldn't know what white was until you knew what black was. Right? How do you know what's in living color and what's not? Without the examples of both, how do you understand either? Right? How do you begin to mix and match colors to colors that you want? If there's no legacy, no history, nobody taught you how to do it. Nobody taught you what the final color was. So we know yellow, blue, and red are primary colors, right? For those of you who are artists, those are what we consider primary colors. But you can mix and match those colors to make the rest of the colors. Which colors? You either have to be taught, or you have to know that you don't have to know that blue and yellow make green, right? But if you tip around with blue and yellow, you have to know what you get is going to be green. How do you know that? Somebody has to tell you what green is. Somebody has to show you what green is, and then associate the color with what that is. So we're all absolutely dependent on each other for our thoughts and the building of our thoughts, and one thought's building another thoughts, right? So I think that, again, back to this independence, I think it's sort of a myth. Right. Number 11, the last topic I want to mention for you, last idea I want to mention for you, is life is messy for everyone. And helping each other negotiate this mess is how we preserve and find our dignity. Because isn't that what independence really is about anyway? It's really about preserving your dignity. It's about finding the moment where you are in control of you. You know what yourself can do, what yourself can contribute, what you can depend on yourself for, and what you can't. This takes introspection. This takes awareness. It also takes engagement. So that you be fully involved in whatever it is you're involved in, enough so that you can be able to understand it and place yourself in it. There are groups that you belong to that you don't really belong to because you don't feel a sense of connection, a sense of resonance, a sense of acceptance. There are groups that you should belong to that you don't belong to because of the baggage that you may have carried in your past, or the issues that are related to how you now think about everyone else. But I'll go back to one of the thoughts that I shared from the Declaration of Independence. If you don't have a foundational knowledge or foundational understanding or belief system in place, how can you even discuss independence? How can you even position it in a way that it's grounded in something that you can count on? Really. And I'm not saying that you have to believe in God, but you have to believe in something in order to really come up with, because your independence has to, I gotta put it, has to be foundational, right? It has to hang on something. It has to exist from something. I know that's a little spiritual, little woo-woo, a little philosophical, but I think you guys are grown up, so you can handle it, right? Now, you can't really talk about independence, and I love this, that the way the Declaration of Independence goes into this, without looking at the challenges to this independence. So whatever you come up with for yourself that means independence, or independence has, or independence is worth, right? You have to recognize that these are 8 challenges that will always come at you, no matter what you're doing in life. No matter where you are, you can't avoid these challenges. These challenges are going to come at you. Maybe all 8 at one time, maybe 2 or 3 at a time, but certainly you're going to be dealing with those challenges constantly, right? Loneliness. The more independent you are, the lonelier you're going to be, because the less you're going to depend on other people. And when you don't depend on other people can't feel meaningful. They can't feel relevant. They can't feel special if there's nothing that they're contributing to someone else that matters. So the more you take away everybody else's ability to contribute to your life through your independence, the lonelier you become, the less relevant they become, and you're creating isolation for yourself. We all know the science of loneliness, right? We all know loneliness leads to death. It leads to disease. It leads to all kinds of negative symptoms. You can look at it in the document here. The second challenge to independence is always influence. We get influences everywhere all day. We're bombarded with things that are trying to influence. People are trying to influence. If you ever read, if you don't want to be independent, you probably need to turn off your television, your email accounts, anything that gives input to your world has to be dissolved, because you can't have any influence if you're going to be independent. But now let me challenge you. If you don't have any influence at all coming in, nothing coming in, no TV, no radio, no nothing, no thoughts from anybody else, no ideas, no concepts. You often say you're off in the woods by yourself somewhere. How will you know you're right or wrong? How will you know, or how will you grow your mindset? No new ideas. You're not picking up any books. You're not reading them. You're not generating ideas coming from outside yourself. Right? So how will you know that you're growing? How will you know you're alive? How will you know that you matter? How will you know that you belong, or you can't belong, actually, right? Think about that. Without influence of some type, who are you really? How do you know you even exist? Number 3, circumstances. There are always circumstances. Circumstances are always a reality, right? There are always facts and features and things that are affecting us. We're not independent of circumstance, situation, reality, right? There's no checking out of that, this gets, I'm reminded of that some of you all might recognize from the Golden Girls. Was it Golden Girls? I can't remember. There was a show where Jesus, I can't even remember the name of the show. This is back in the 70s. That's how long ago it was. But it was a show where there's a gentleman who would be in the same room, but he'd do this thing and make himself invisible. Anybody remember the name of the show? Type it in the chat for me so I can see it pop up, right? But you think about it. Are we really invisible? Even if we think we're not being heard, we're not being understood, nobody cares about us. Are we really not there? Do we really not count? Do we really not matter? Of course we do. It might be a little ludicrous to think that, circumstances don't affect us or we don't create the circumstance that affects other people around us. We do. Number 4, the other challenge to independence is restrictions. There are always restrictions in life. There are always restrictions. There might be social restrictions. There might be political restrictions, legal restrictions, environmental restrictions. All kinds of restrictions are happening all around us. There are things that we should do, things that we shouldn't do. There's goods and there's bad. There's do's and there's don'ts. There's right and there's wrong. And who's to say what is and what is not? Society says a lot of times. The political environment dictates this a lot of times. The economic environment dictates this a lot of times. And it's not hidden. Now, it may not always be clear, but the more intellectually, I would say, intellectual growth you possess. I'm not saying in education, because people get twisted about what education is or is not. But the more you study and learn, the more you experience in life, the more you grow, the more you'll know about what's really going on versus what somebody tells you is going on. You'll be able to discern the truth of the situation. You'll be able to see what restrictions really are, that there really are. Speed limit says 55 miles an hour. That's supposed to impose upon you a governing structure that says I'm restricted to driving 55 miles an hour. But are you restricted? Or are you restricted when you get caught going over the speed limit? Where does the restriction happen? Is it the law that's written down, or is it the application of the law, or is it somewhere in between? Again, these are challenges to your independence. No matter where they're written or not written or understood, they're challenges to your freedom to do whatever you want to do. There's restrictions. There's also authority. Number 5. There's also people. There's also governments that have authority over some aspect of your life. Try to, not pay your taxes, or try to do something that the law says you cannot do. Now, usually the law says it because it's the minimum behavior that you're responsible for to make sure you're not impinging upon someone else's rights to be, to pursue liberty, happiness, and life, right? So think about it. What authority governs your reality? Because that's a challenge to your independence. The next challenge to your independence is anything that dominates you, any domination whatsoever, anything that's forceful that suggests that if you don't do what they say you should do, there will be a punishment levied against you. There might be an emotional punishment, a social punishment, a real physical punishment, a spiritual punishment. But this, whatever it is, has dominion and power over something that you want or need. And as long as that's the case, that's a challenge again to independence. Of course, the subjugation, right, which is a different form of authority and domination. Because to make someone a subject or make someone subject to your will means their will is being influenced and subverted by your will. And they're now subject to your authority, to your domination, to your restrictions, to the circumstances that you dictate, not just provide, but dictate, right? Subjugation is a beast. But again, it's something that affects us all because we're all subject to something. Some of us are subject to love the person that we love, the people that we love. And we will put them above us in a heartbeat. If somebody says, well, one of you got to die, I'm volunteering before, I'm saying, listen, take me before you take my wife and daughter, or my sister, or my father. Am I subject to my love for them because of it? Or is this a notion of freedom that I have the choice? Is it so compelling that I don't have the choice? Or is it a function of the choice? That's why you think about this independent stuff, man. Can get really complicated. The last section of independence that really, really affects us, and we can't do anything about it, is the environment. There's the political environment, the social environment, the economic environment, the legal environment. All these environments, right? These affect us. In fact, and in the real economic ecosystem, that fifth environment, right? These are all the environments that affect us. And we can't not be affected by them because we live in them. Only way to not be affected by them is to not live in them. Try not living in the ecosystem. You can't even go out into the woods and not live in the ecosystem. Right? So that's another effect again of our independence. We can't make it stop raining. And we might be dependent on something that needs a rain. Like you're trying to grow crops by yourself. You get enough rain. Shame. I feel sorry for you because you can't go to the store and buy nothing. You might not make it through the winter if you don't have anything to eat. A dry season will take it out. Or make whatever you eat worthless. So think about that. All these things challenge your independence. So should we be looking for independence at all? Really? So I think all this stuff is important. All these things are ideas and concepts that we come up with when it comes to independence are things that we should challenge and we should think about. And we should ask ourselves, do we really want independence? Or do we want something else? Maybe we want interdependence. Maybe somewhere between independence and dependence is a middle ground on most situations in our lives and most roles that we play. And maybe interdependence is the world we need to look at. I discuss it in a document, but I'm not going to go any further in this discussion. But I want you all to know that, independence has a value, but that value can really be challenged by so many different things. And you really do have to ask yourself the question. I suggest you ask yourself the same questions that the framers of our Constitution asked. One, what am I really willing to stand for? What am I really willing to go to the mat and defend? What are the values and principles that I hold dear? And I know I hold them dear. For whatever reasons, I hold them dear. But I hold them dear. And then what are the things that could possibly challenge those values and those principles? List them all out. Write them all out. The 25 accusations of the king. What are the 25 challenges or so that you can come up with that challenge your beliefs, what you think is valuable and important in life? And then finally, what are you going to commit? What are you willing to commit and act upon to ensure that the values and principles that you say you believe in, you actually are doing it? I promise you, write this stuff down, write out your affirmation statements, your declarations, right? Write out your belief system, write out the values that you think you hold dear, and then make yourself a commitment. And then honor those commitments. I promise you what's going to happen is you're going to grow your integrity. And when you grow your integrity, you're going to grow your value to the rest of us, which means you're going to be more trustworthy. And because you're more trustworthy, trust is something that we can leverage. Trust is something that we can transfer and share from one person to another. And the more integrity that all of us have, the more trustworthy the rest of the world becomes. So that's my challenge for you. Don't just write this independence thing off as a no-brainer. Take a deep dive into it and see what it means to you and how you can live a life that's reflective of the kind of integrity that you want to have, that you want to bring to the table, that you want to contribute to the world. Okay, guys, I had a good time. We're at the show is we've been at this for now for quite a few minutes. I'm gonna take it and end it. If you have any concepts, any ideas, anything that you want to share at any time, feel free to put it in the chat. I definitely will, respond. I definitely will look forward to seeing all of you all when we can get back together again personally. I'm looking forward to it. I probably will always keep the show going in some kind of hybrid mode, if nothing else. I love you and have a great week. They can make the weekend count and look forward to you experience as much liberty and happiness and independence you possibly can. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.